أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our final episode of our series, episode number 50, the series Muhammad, the man who changed the world. And before we begin the series, before we begin the episode, when I started the recording, and the intention was that we draw closer to the Prophet ﷺ, to get to know more about him, something we haven't learned before, and hoping that there could be a bit of a relationship that we can develop. And over this past 49 episodes, I hope you've grown closer, and the love for the Nabi Sallallahu has grown dearer. And really, this episode, which will talk about the death and the last 100 days of the Prophet should be a little emotional. I know it's always emotional for me when I talk about it, and so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us to always and forever love the Prophet. So the Prophet's demise and his death were basically foreshadowed or foretold by the Quran. There are many ayat in the Quran which makes it clear that the Prophet would never live forever. Death is decreed for everybody. Allah says in the Quran in Surah Anbiya, وَمَا جَعْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدَ أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ. Allah says, and we had granted to no person immortality before you, O Muhammad. Then if you should die, would they live forever? I was asking that if even you will die, so does anyone else think that they would have the right to live forever? Also, Allah mentioned in Surah Ali Imran, this is part of the verses of the Battle of Uhud. If we remember in the Battle of Uhud, many of the companions thought the Prophet had died, and they basically surrendered. They basically gave up. They gave up completely. They just collapsed. And so Allah revealed after the battle, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ, that Muhammad is not but a messenger. قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ, that we that the messengers have passed away before him. أَفَإِن مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. So if he were to die or if he were to be killed, would you turn back on your heels? Meaning, would you go back to disbelief? وَمَن يَنقَلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَن يَضُرُّ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا. And if any of you were to turn back and leave Islam, then none of you would. This does not harm Allah in the least. وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ الشَّاكِرِينَ. But Allah will reward those who remain grateful. And then perhaps one of the actual last chapter of the Quran to be revealed in its totality. You could really say this chapter was revealed perhaps during the farewell pilgrimage or just before the farewell pilgrimage. So really about a month or two, a couple of months before the Prophet passed away, this chapter, which is revealed from the first to the end, it's the 110th chapter. Many of us know the chapter, one of the last surahs of the Quran. Allah says, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. When the help of Allah comes and the victory comes, when the victory and the help of Allah comes, meaning when Islam is powerful, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, and you see people entering the religion of Islam, the religion of Allah, in crowds. When people flock to Islam, Islam is just growing and growing. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ. Then praise your Lord, وَاسْتَغْفِرْ, and ask His forgiveness. إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Allah is oft returning to you. So Allah is mentioning in you, O Muhammad, begin to praise your Lord and ask for and repent and remember Allah is ever returning. So when this surah came down, the people celebrated. What a great surah! That it's basically a declaration of victory. It's Allah saying that when you see the victory of Allah and the people entering Islam, then praise Allah and glorify Him. Everyone is celebrating. What a wonderful declaration from Allah that we're gonna win, or we're winning, we've won. And Abu Bakr is in tears. And people did not understand why is he in tears. Some asked why, what is going on? And Abu Bakr understands that when Allah is speaking to the Prophet himself, so O Muhammad, you start preparing yourself. Praise Allah. That to Allah is that innahu kana tawwaba. Allah is oft returning, meaning Allah is oft forgiving. But also there's tawwaba also means to return. That the return to Allah is inevitable. Some other motifs that showed in the Prophet ﷺ that things were strange. The few months before Hajj was the month of Ramadan, and in that month, usually in Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ would revise the entire Quran with Jibreel, the angel Jibreel. And the Prophet said something strange happened this year. Jibreel did a second revision with me. It was as if though there was an extra emphasis to revise the Quran. Also, the Prophet ﷺ mentions at the farewell sermon, we didn't speak about it in the last episode, but one of the things he says on Hajj, he says, oh my people, listen very intently, because I don't know if I will be with you like this year next year. He's saying to them, I don't expect to see you like this again. We are here together, all of us together on one place. Perhaps, and when he says perhaps, he means, I don't expect that it will be like this again. There will be another chance like this. Also, when he dispatched some of his generals, when he bid them farewell, or his governors, it was as if though it was a permanent farewell. For example, we spoke about this when Mu'adh ibn Jabal, this great companion, the Prophet said, I love you so much, Mu'adh. And he says to him, oh Mu'adh, perhaps Mu'adh, when you may not meet me after this year. As Mu'adh is leaving, he says, you may not meet me after this year, but perhaps you may pass my mosque of mine and you'll find my grave. You'll find my grave here. Again, a premonition. The Prophet knows he is going to be buried here. And Mu'adh wept in grief of departure, and the Prophet ﷺ then turned facing Medina and said that those nearest to me are the pious, and whoever they are and whenever they are, that you will be with me whether you are, beautifully he says, whoever they are and whenever they are. So where and when and whatever, you are close to the Prophet ﷺ, even if you are living now in 2025, 2020, wherever you are listening to this. If you are pious, then you will be of the closest of those to the Prophet. So don't worry about distance. Time and space cannot separate you from the Prophet ﷺ if you are pious. But again, he's saying to Mu'adh, I don't think you're going to see me after this. And so, if we again to look at where we are in the life of Nabi Sallam, he is 63 years old. The first 40 years, he was an ordinary man, a special person, but he had not yet received revelation. At the age of 40, he becomes a Nabi, and he spends the next 13 years preaching in Mecca, having a lot of difficulty. He then immigrates to Medina, and for the next 10 years, Badr and Uhud, Ahzab, the different stages, conquest of Mecca. He then performed the farewell Hajj, and now he returns to Medina, and it is Muharram. Muharram is the new year of the 11th year of the Hijrah. So it's Muharram, and basically for the next 100 days, the Prophet has about 100 days left before he passes away in the month of Rabi al-Awwal, the same month that he was born. And most scholars agree that the Prophet ﷺ was born on a Monday in the month of Rabi al-Awwal, and he passed away on the 12th of the Rabi al-Awwal, which is also a Monday. And soon after returning from returned from Hajj from Mecca. When he returned from Hajj from Mecca, two things happened during his last few months in Medina. The first thing was that he was preparing for a major international campaign once again. So the work continues. Now that all of Arabia, all of Yemen, all of Oman, Bahrain, all of this is under the domain of Islam. There is still technically a war between the Muslims and the Ghassanids, or the Romans north, the Christians north of Arabia. So if you remember, first they had killed an ambassador of the Nabi Sallam, and then he had sent an army in which Zayd was the commander, and Zayd died, and eventually Khalid Walid took over the command. And remember that battle, the Battle of Mu'tah, and that battle was not conclusive. Then a year prior, a couple of years after the Battle of Mu'tah, the Prophet himself takes a major expedition to that region, the Battle of Tabuk, with a huge army, but there's no fighting. Once again, no conclusion, and he returns. So he then now establishes another army to go in that direction. And all of this is in the direction of Masjid al-Aqsa. Nobody can doubt that of all the areas that he's going to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is sort of his target. And he appoints Usama, this very young 16, 17, 18-year-old young man, Usama, the son of Zayd, as the commander to go deep into the land of the Romans with the intention of Palestine. And many of the companions are concerned about this appointment. And they're saying, Ya Rasulullah, you are taking on basically the most powerful nation in the world, and you are sending the armies, the entire military strength of Medina, you're sending it in against the Romans, and of all the generals, and you've got so many skilled and qualified leaders here, you are appointing a young teenager to be the commander. And they not criticized, but they were very concerned, and they made it known that they were not happy with this decision. And the Prophet ﷺ, he rebukes them in a light way, and he says, if you people are criticizing him as a leader, then remember you criticized the leadership of his father before. And one of the reasons why they were criticizing Usama, not just that he was young, in reality, they were criticizing him is because he was not from an elite family. Remember, Zayd was a slave, and Usama is the son of a slave. And so there are still, the Sahaba are still only human. And it's just human nature that they found it difficult that a teenager who was the son of two slaves, both Zayd and his mother Ayman were slaves. And for us to now follow his leadership, there are so many better men than him. And the Prophet ﷺ is very clear. He says, "You criticizing Usama the same way you criticize his father. And by Allah, Zayd, deserved the leadership indeed. You all know when I made Zayd the leader, you had a problem. But what a great job did he do. Zayd as a leader was fantastic. But you were criticizing, you didn't, like he's saying, guys, you didn't trust me before. And look, I was right. And here again, I put in Usama. And he used to, and you know, now again, what a great honor it is to Zayd and Usama. He says, the Prophet says, and you know that Zayd used to be the most beloved person to me. You know how much I loved Zayd, and now his son Usama is of the most beloved persons to me after him. So don't talk to me about Usama. I don't want to hear anything about Usama. SubhanAllah, what a great status Usama and Zayd radiallahu anhu have. Or the Prophet is saying, I don't want to hear anything. I loved Zayd, and Zayd did a good job. You didn't trust me then, but he did a good job. And I'm saying again, Usama, I love him. He's going to do a good job. And Usama, you're in charge. And so, conversation done. And so the army, it's the month of Safar, and towards the end of the month of Safar, they left towards an expedition with the Romans. So it's going north to go and take on the Romans. Usama is in charge, and basically the army is, the bulk of the people are with this army. And so the Prophet ﷺ remains behind with a few senior Sahaba, and the Prophet ﷺ then falls, he didn't fall ill yet, but he does a couple of things which were out of the ordinary. The Prophet ﷺ one night leaves his house and he goes to the people who were buried at Uhud. He visits the Shuhada. So remember at the Battle of Uhud, there were 70 companions who had been martyred, and because there were so many of them, they weren't taken to the actual cemetery of Medina, so they were buried at the battlefield. So the Prophet goes out. Today, I mean, it's a short drive from Medina, the mosque of the Prophet to Uhud. But you could imagine for him, this was something sort of a little outside of town. And he went all the way out of, the downtown, and he went to the burial place of the people of Uhud. And he also visits the major cemetery of Medina, the Baqi. And he greets, so he's going to visit all the dead people. And he greets them, peace be upon you, O dwellers of the tomb. May that morning that dawns upon you be better and more relieving than that which dawns upon the living. The Prophet is saying basically he's saying to the dead that the morning and the dawn for you people that are dead is better than the dawn for the living. That where you are is better than where the living is. And then he says, affliction are approaching the living like cloudy lamps of a dark night, the last of which follows the first, and the last one is bearing more evil than the first. So he says that the living are going to experience affliction upon affliction, like a storm bringing clouds upon clouds, and each one, the next one is even worse than the previous one. So those the furthest away are going to have it harder than those who are living. And he's almost saying that even the living people that are like, and this is Sahaba, they have it easy, they have it more difficult than you, O dead people. In other words, he's saying, I am actually not worried about you. You guys have made it. You guys are safe. And he says to them, we will meet soon. He tells them, we will meet soon at my hawd, at my pond. This is in the afterlife. But I'm worried about the living of my ummah because I see affliction on the horizon. And subhanAllah, if you are listening to this, then we are now the latest generation from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And we are going through, if you were to follow his trajectory, that this is the most difficult time it is to be a Muslim right now. And so to hold on your iman is a great struggle and a great also a great honor and privilege to be a Muslim in this time. And so he says, I'm very worried about the latter part of my ummah, and I'm okay with those, even those who have passed away. And then the Prophet he visited the maqbara with one of his servants. He never had slaves, he had servants who accompanied him. And the Prophet says to his servant while being at the cemetery, the Prophet says to him, Allah has offered me the choice of kingship in this dunya, to be a king, and then die and get Jannatul Firdaus. So, and the servant says, Ya Rasulullah, take it, it's a good offer. Be a king in the world, enjoy the dunya, and then get Jannah afterwards. And in fact, he doesn't need to be offered, he's already a king. He is, if you were alive at that time and you were watching the news, he is the undisputed ruler of the entire Arabian Peninsula. He has, as we saw at the Hajjatul Wida, 100,000 people following every motion, every step. Even if he were to spit, they would grab his saliva. If he were to say sit, they would sit. If he would say jump, they would say how high. The world is watching him. He would have been on the front page of every newspaper, man of the year. The entire Arabia is basically within his hands. And so he really is a king, if you want to have it from that. But now he's saying to the servant that I've been offered by Allah the chance to be a king in this world and to get Jannah in the afterlife. And the servant says, Ya Rasulullah, take it, it's a good offer. And the Prophet says, no, I have already chosen Jannah. I've chosen Jannah. Kingship does not interest him. Again, he's going to make these very profound statements. Like when he says at the farewell sermon, I don't know if I'll see you again. Listen, I don't know if I'll be here again. He says to his servant, I've chosen the akhirah. Many of them are thinking this is far in the future. They don't understand he's talking in real time. That it's a matter of days that I'm not going to be around, and I've already made my choice. And the fact that he's greeting the dead, he's not going to visit them again. It's amazing. So the Prophet clearly knew that his time was close. And he has consciously made the decision, I have done everything I need to do. And that's why he asks the community, what will you say about me? Have I done my job? And they said, yes, you have done your job. So now, basically 2 weeks before he passes away, at the end of the month of Safar, the Prophet ﷺ begins to take ill. And he gets a fever. And his fever was quite severe. And people were amazed at how hot he was, and he was struggling to basically do daily things like perform salah. So part of his ritual was, he would obviously, as we know, he would go out every waqt and he would lead the prayer. He would remain in the masjid for some time. He would go around in Medina. He would visit people. He would be teaching a class. He would be giving sermons. He would be giving advice, and he would visit all his wives. So he's very active, and then he would come home at night, and then he would pray tahajjud, and he would sleep. So a very, very busy day. He really kept you could almost, and if you add the hours of tahajjud, he basically kept a 18, 19 hour work schedule and a very few hours of sleep. Now he's finding it difficult to keep up with all his duties. And so he calls all of his wives and he asks them permission if they can allow him to give him their permission to allow him to remain in one house. And everyone knew he was most comfortable in the house of Aisha. He was most comfortable in her company, in her care, and everybody, all the wives, of course, agreed. They came around and they all said, of course. And while he's sitting there, the wives are obviously, all of them are together, and they all see him in his pain and in his heat, in his fever. And our mother Safiya, always crying, a very soft-hearted lady, she begins to cry and cry, and she says, oh ya Rasulullah, how I wish I could take your sickness and I could be the one sick and you could be okay. And the other wives, they roll their eyes like, oh, Safiya, she's being dramatic, or she's like just trying to act all cute. The Prophet ﷺ says to the other wives, go rinse your mouths out. Basically, she's telling the truth, and she's being honest in what she's saying. And people, the Sahaba, are beginning to get a little concerned because they've never seen him ill like this. They've never seen him struggle to come out for Salah, and that he is not doing any of his normal stuff. He's not teaching a class. Class is on hold. His public meetings are all cancelled. And so the people are beginning to camp outside of his house, and everyone is looking to bring him something. So everyone is trying to help him, bring him some water, bring him something special. And they would go out and fetch. Water is in short supply, so they want to make sure that he always has water on hand so that they could bring the fever down. Fever was like a death sentence for many people back in the day without antibiotics. So when you get a fever, you'd obviously have an infection, and so you'd have to break the fever. And so they brought water from all over Medina to try and make sure that he was that he was taken care of. When he would come to the masjid to make salah, he needed to be held up. And so Ali radiallahu anh, or Ibn Abbas, one of the companions that were family members of his, they would come and they would help lead him to salah. And he still is not missing any of his prayers, and he's not doing any of the public address. And in this time, while he was sick, we know that both Aisha and him were sick. Aisha also was not feeling well, and she had a type of a migraine or something. And there's a cute hadith where, and this is like maybe a week or two before he passes away, Aisha says, yeah, she says, yeah, wa ra'sa, that she says, oh my head, how, wa ra'sa means, oh my head, how so, oh my head. And she says to the Nabi Sallam, my head is very, very sore. And the Prophet says, no, Aisha, it is in fact my head that is very sore. You should feel how sore my head is. Like you think your head is sore, my head is even worse. The Prophet ﷺ is dying. He knows he's dying. Aisha she basically has a migraine, or she's under the weather, whereas he is dying, and he's obviously having it a lot more intense. And he says to her, and he's teasing her, and he says, why are you so worried if you were to die? Why are why are you so worried if you're gonna die? If you were to die, does it not make you happy that I will personally ghusl your body, and I will shroud you, and I'll perform janazah salah on you, and I will place you in the qabr myself, So why are you so worried? If you're sick and the sickness is serious, then I will take care of you, so you don't have to even worry. And she says, oh, you speak so fondly about me dying, as if though you can't wait to get rid of me and replace me with somebody else. And he says, no, I wouldn't do that. I would miss you deeply. But he's teasing her, because he's almost saying he's worried how she would feel when he passes away. He's saying to her that, if you were to die, it will be actually easier than having to go through my death. And he knows what is going to come is going to be devastating for her. And so he continues like this. And he says to her, Aisha, please go around and look at all my worldly possessions. What do I have? What do I own? What do I have in the house? And so she looked, and she says, okay, I will. And he insists. She's taking care of him, and she's busy with other things. And he says, look, go through the house and bring everything. And she said, the only thing we have is these 7 silver coins. The only thing that I could find in your pockets and all over the house is 7 silver coins. And the Prophet ﷺ says to her, he's very, very sad. He says, how can I meet Allah with this money in my hands? How can I meet Allah with these 7 coins? Go and distribute this. Give these coins away. And he's becoming even more sick, where he's not even fully conscious. Sometimes he would be unconscious, and then he would wake up, and he would say, Aisha, did you give those 7 coins away? And she would say, Ya Rasulullah, you are sick, I can't leave you like this. I'm taking care of you. And he says, Aisha, give that money away. I can't stand before Allah with that money in my possession. Again, I want us to remember, this is a man who is dispatching an army to the Romans. He has governors in Yemen and Bahrain and Oman. He rules the entire Arabian Peninsula undisputedly. He can take whatever he wants. And this is all he has, 7 little coins. And he is so sad. How can I have money? How can I have money like this? Give it away. And he insists. And Aisha says that in our house, when the Prophet ﷺ, towards the end, the only thing we had was a small cup of barley, a small bag of barley, and I gave everything away. I didn't even have oil in the lamp for light. I had to lend some oil to go. That's it. This is the man who's ruling the world, basically. That's all he has. It's just some barley in his house to eat. And so, as his fever and his sickness becomes more severe, as we said, it becomes more and more difficult for him to lead the salah. And it was a Friday night, perhaps Maghrib or Isha, that he comes out and he performs he hasn't been giving any major lectures. It's been very mild, he's just been in and out. He's not made many appearances, and he comes and he performs salah for Maghrib or Isha, the night of Friday. And we know that what he recited, the last sort of surah, it was Surah Mursalat. And then he tried again to come and perform salah the next waqt. Maybe this is Isha on Friday, and as he tries to, he faints. He is unable to stand. He's unable to stand, and so he faints, and the salah cannot be completed, and so he completes with a lot of difficulty. And then at that point of the salah, he tells Aisha, tell Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr should lead the salah. And initially there's a lot of hesitation. Aisha says, no, not Abu Bakr. Ask why wouldn't she want her dad to lead the salah? She says Abu Bakr cries and he recites slowly, and people are going to get annoyed with him. Abu Bakr cannot recite Quran without breaking down in tears, and so obviously people want to finish the salah, and he's going to cry and cry. Appoint someone else, and he is emphatic. The Prophet is emphatic. Nobody will lead except Abu Bakr. Tell Abu Bakr, command Abu Bakr. I said to him, he will lead the salah. And Abu Bakr begins to lead the salah. So we can imagine the last few days, maybe it's Saturday, Sunday, and Abu Bakr is leading the salah. And as he's leading, one of the waqts perhaps Abu Bakr wasn't available on time, and Sayyidina Umar was leading the salah, and the Prophet could hear Umar leading the salah. The Prophet says, tell Umar to stop. Nobody besides Abu Bakr, we do not accept from anyone to lead the salah except Abu Bakr. And so Abu Bakr would lead the salah. And he, as we said, Abu Bakr was someone that would recite and then he would burst into tears. And so Abu Bakr is now leading the salah. And one of the evenings, perhaps this could be Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, Asr or Dhuhr, towards after Abu Bakr is leading now a number of salahs. Abu Bakr is in the middle of salah when the Prophet ﷺ is basically kind of, with the assistance of other companions, he comes out, and while Abu Bakr is leading the salah, the congregation can see the Prophet coming out. Abu Bakr is making salah, he's not, he's zoned out reciting Quran, and the companions make a commotion. And Abu Bakr now catches on, and he looks and he sees that the Prophet ﷺ has arrived. And the Prophet ﷺ wants to join the saf behind Abu Bakr. And the Prophet motions Abu Bakr, remain as the Imam and I will stand behind you. And Abu Bakr cannot bring himself to lead the Prophet in Salah, and he motions that the Prophet ﷺ should lead the Salah. And so the Prophet ﷺ sits next to Abu Bakr, or in front of Abu Bakr, leading, and Abu Bakr follows the Prophet ﷺ, and the whole ummah and the Imam and the congregation is standing behind Abu Bakr. And so the Prophet ﷺ is in front of Abu Bakr, he's sitting, Abu Bakr is leading, and the whole ummah or the whole congregation is following Abu Bakr. The symbolism is beautiful here. And then the Prophet ﷺ is, after the end of Salah, he is placed on the mimbar. He's sitting down, and even now he teaches them basic fiqh. He says to them, they try to, obviously when Abu Bakr was leading, they tried to get his attention, and they clap their hands, to get his attention. And the Prophet says, when the Imam makes a mistake, ladies clap their hands, and the men should say Subhanallah. That if you want to capture the Imam's attention, you say Subhanallah. And so he's teaching them that. Then now he's sitting on the pulpit. They haven't seen him in a long time. He's giving his first sort of address to the companions after basically a week or two of absence, and many of them are so happy just to see him, and they feel now he's a little better. And so he begins talking to them, and he says a number of things in his speech. He says to them, have I hurt anybody? Have I insulted anybody? Have I hit anybody? And if I have hit anybody, then here is my back. Please hit me and take your rights. Take your rights. He then also says to them, Allah has given a slave from the slaves of Allah was given the opportunity to choose between this world and the year after, and what he keeps from him in the world. But this servant has opted for the akhirah. The Prophet is saying, there's a servant who was given a choice of this world and the akhirah, but he chose the akhirah. And the Sahaba all said, wow, that's amazing, that's a great thing. Abu Bakr bursts into tears. Upon hearing this, some of the people look at him. Now imagine in the masjid, the Imam is saying, MashaAllah, there's a man, he was given the choice between the dunya and the akhirah, and he chose the akhirah. And one of the people in the masjid begin to cry as if though he's heard the worst news. And they say, what's wrong with this? And they actually say, what's wrong with the old man? Abu Bakr, they call the old man. He hears that a person, look at that old man. The messenger says about a slave being granted this world and the next, and he chooses the year after, but he says, we sacrifice our father and mother for you, for your sake. He's crying and he's saying, and Abu Bakr is like saying, inna lillahi wa inna, in our understanding, Abu Bakr is saying, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Right? And how can you say that for such a good news? And later on they realized that Abu Bakr was the only one understanding what he's saying. He's saying that my time is up and that I've chosen the akhirah. I've chosen the akhirah. And then the Prophet ﷺ starts giving advice. And he says, take care of the new converts as you were taken care of. Look after those new people who embrace Islam. The new people, look after them, and look after the delegations, the guests who come. Look after them the way I looked after them. And fear Allah with regards to the weak in your society. And do not take my masjid as a grave. When I die, do not take my grave as a place of worship. And then again he continued, whoever I have lashed, then here is my back that I should lash. And do I owe anybody any debts? And he insists, do I owe anybody any debts? Do I owe anybody debts? And one companion felt, the Prophet owed him something. It's not that he cared, but he said, Ya Rasulullah, you owe me something. And the Prophet asked him, how do I owe you something? He said, remember there was a beggar and you told me, give this guy a few coins. And so I gave it. And I am only saying this because I'm fearful if I don't, I'm going to be punished. And the Prophet says, yeah. Take some money, and he was paid. And he repeated again and again, do I owe anybody? And then he says, I warn you, I'm telling you, O people, be good to the Ansar, be good to the people of Medina. They are my family, and with them I found shelter and protection. They have acquitted themselves that they fulfilled their duty and their responsibility that fell upon them, and now there remains what you have to do. So he's saying, oh Ansar, you have done your job and you have fulfilled your promise. He's almost saying, our agreement has come to an end now, Ansar, but the rest of the ummah. And he knows that the Ansar are not going to be in charge, that after the Ansar there will be new rulers, and he's saying that they look after the Ansar, look after whoever's in charge, look after the Ansar, because they are my family and they fulfilled their job to me. And you should fully acknowledge and accept the favor that I've shown upon the Ansar. Always look upon them well and overlook their faults. And then he says, I have repaid everybody in this life. Everybody who has done a favor to me, I have repaid them, except Abu Bakr. For I cannot repay him, only Allah can repay him. And were I to choose a Khalil, a very close, intimate companion, a friend, I would have taken Abu Bakr as my Khalil, but Allah has already taken me as a Khalil. So Khalil is your BFF. You only have one. You can't have two Khalils. So he said, I'm already a Khalil with Allah, so I cannot take Abu Bakr, but he would be my Khalil. And then he says, let everybody's doors to the house. So everybody had a private access to the masjid. Let all of those doors be closed except Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is the only one that should have access, a private access to the masjid. And the Prophet also mentioned in this time, none of you should ever die except having good thoughts about Allah. Again, Jabir is telling us that of the last hadith he heard from the Prophet, that same Jabir we spoke about so many times, he says, the Prophet said in those last few days, perhaps even at this sermon, none of you should ever die. When you reach the end of your life, the last thing you should think about, yes, you think many things. You think about, you're fearful, what's going to happen to my kids, what about myself, the sins, my regrets, you think all those things. But the last thought you should have is you should think well of Allah. You should be optimistic about meeting Allah. And then his final advice, he said, like to his ummah, as-salah, as-salah, look after your salah, look after your salah, look after your salah, and look after the women, the children, the orphans, the slaves under your command, the weak in your society. Look after the salah and look after the weak in society. And then he was carried down and taken back to his room, into Aisha's room, and many of the companions actually felt happy. They felt that, alhamdulillah, it's been 2 weeks, we haven't seen him give a sermon, we haven't seen him given a class, and here he's come out, he's made salah. Yes, he's still a bit ill, but now he is better. And so they felt that he is on the mend, he is getting better, and things are going back to normal. And many of them who were actually so worried, like when a relative is in the ICU, you're at the hospital, you're camping out. So they felt like he's outside of the woods, he's out of the woods, he's out of the ICU, and so they started to leave the mosque. And so the next morning, so this was Sunday, Monday morning, the 12th of Rabi al Awwal. Monday, the 12th of Rabi al Awwal. It is Fajr time. And they're waiting, will he come out? Will he come out? And the indication is he's not coming out for Fajr. And so the adhan is given, and Abu Bakr gets up, and Abu Bakr leads the salah. And in the middle of his salah, while Abu Bakr is leading, Aisha says that she was surprised. The Prophet got up from his bed with a lot of energy. He got up and he was strong. And he got up and he walked unassisted. Now between the mosque and where he's staying, Aisha's house, was a small wall or partition, and he opens the curtain or the door, and as he opens the door and the companions are in salah, Abu Bakr is leading, again there is this commotion, and the companions look, their focus shifts from the salah and they're looking at him standing at the door, and he stands there and he's grinning, he's smiling with a big beautiful smile. And many of the companions mentioned this was the last we saw of him, smiling. And even though, look, it's night time, it's not yet sunrise, there's no electricity, there wasn't much light, the mosque was dark, but it was as if though there was this light that came upon, and they could not focus on their prayer, they were looking at him. And again Abu Bakr sees him, and Abu Bakr wants to motion for him to take over, and the Prophet ﷺ just halts him and motions that he should stay, and he just stands and he watches them praying Fajr Salah. And this is the last they see him and the last he sees of them, and he watches them until the Salah ends, and then he lowers the curtain and he comes back to his bed, and now his fever returns and he becomes even more sick, and now the sickness becomes more and more severe. And in that morning, Monday morning, Fatima, his daughter, comes to visit him, and she comes close to him and he says something to her and she bursts into tears. And then he motioned again, he says something to her and she begins to laugh. And later on, Aisha would ask her, what did he say to you that you laughed and you cried? You cried and you laughed. She says that when he was so sick, she came to say, my father, you are so sick and suffering so much. And he said to her, after today, your father will not suffer anymore. And then she burst into tears because he's saying, I'm going to pass away. And then, why did you laugh, O Fatima? He said to me that I will be the first of his family to meet him. And we know that Fatima does not live more than 6 months after the Prophet passed away. Also, remember, Usama was sent with an army. And when he heard how sick the Prophet was, he stopped the army and he came back to Medina to assess the situation. And so he visits again the Prophet this morning. And he is so sick, the Prophet is so sick, he's not able to move or even speak. Usama comes and the Prophet again motions for him like, what are you doing here? You need to go. Don't worry, I'm okay. And he points to him and he points up. In other words, he's so again to the last end, saying to Usama, I love you. It's okay, Usama. Don't worry about me. Go and do your job. And so Usama leaves and he goes back out to join the army. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying, Aisha says, he gets so much worse, and he begins to say, Ala inna maut la sakarat, that there is a sakarat to death, that in death there is a pang within death, that death has its suffering, that there is suffering in death. And he starts making tahleel, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, and he's asking Allah for assistance in his death. Also, in that morning, Aisha's brother came to visit and she's holding him, and Aisha's brother had a miswak in his hand, and the Prophet ﷺ points out that he wants the miswak, and so Aisha takes it and she chews the other side, and the Prophet ﷺ brushed his teeth as if though he's going to, like, preparing himself for something else. And as he is losing consciousness, Aisha doesn't know what to do except to hold him. And as he would pass out, and then he would come back to consciousness, and he was whispering things. He was whispering, mumbling something. She couldn't know what it was, and so she heard him say, Ar-Rafiq al-A'la, Ar-Rafiq al-A'la, the companionship of those most high. And she didn't know what this means. What is he saying? The companionship of most high. In the coming days, she would remember that the Prophet ﷺ told her that there is no Nabi except that before a Nabi, a Prophet passes away, the angel of death must ask permission. And the angel of death will come and visit the Prophet and any Prophet, all the Anbiya, and show them their place in the Akhirah and inform them that they are awaited. But it's up to them to determine, and they must give their consent. And Aisha said, when he told me this many years ago, I said to myself, when that moment comes, you will not choose us over Allah. You would not choose living over meeting Allah. And so when he said, Ar-Rafiq al-A'la, Ar-Rafiq al-A'la, it only hit her days after that, that what he was saying was, I want to leave, I want to meet Allah. What he's saying is, I want to meet Allah. And then his body basically became heavy and he died, passed away in the arms of Aisha. And Aisha shrieks and she shouts that the people around could hear that the Prophet ﷺ has passed away. The Prophet ﷺ has passed away. And people obviously can't rush into a house because the house of Aisha was sacred. And so a commotion breaks out. Fatima rushes in, the close family members of the Muslim rush in, and Aisha is in shock. The people who come there is in shock. They cannot believe that he has passed away. Sayyidina Umar hears the commotion, he rushes to the mosque, but he can't go into the, so it's as if though you're standing outside of a waiting room and you hear someone is okay, the operation was fine, you can't go in to visit them, so you're sitting in the waiting room, you're all feeling happy, and then the news comes, actually the person has just passed away. And so Umar is hugely, shocked, angry, sad, that he says, this cannot be true. There is no way he could have died. This can't be true. Now he's talking to the people in the mosque, and all of you are just liars and munafiqs for saying this. How can you believe that he has died? How can you believe that Muhammad has died? Muhammad can't die. The Prophet has gone to meet Allah. His soul has met Allah, and he's going to come back. And by Allah, if any of you says that he dies, I will kill you myself. He pulls his sword out and says, I will strike you with my sword, and I will tell him what lies you spoke about him, that you munafiqs, how dare you say that he has died. And so there's this commotion in the mosque. Some people are screaming, some people are shouting. Umar is saying, you dare. Who says he's dying? He's almost, wants to fight. Abu Bakr is in the mosque at that time. And he eventually, the news reaches him, and he rushes to Aisha's home, and he goes straight into the house of Aisha. And Aisha is sitting to one side in tears, Fatima is there, and they're all just looking at the Prophet's blessed body, motionless on the bed of Aisha. And Abu Bakr sits by the Prophet and opens his head, and he says, you are beautiful even in death. You are beautiful in life, and you are beautiful in death. And he kisses the Prophet and he says, I would give up my mother and my father to have you back. Prophet, I would give up everything to have you back. But I know Allah will not allow you to suffer death twice. That everyone must suffer death. Allah will not allow you to suffer it twice. And he says, how beautiful you are in death. Then Abu Bakr goes out and he sees the screaming and shouting that is in the mosque, and he sees Umar having his sword in his hand, and he is screaming at the people, and Abu Bakr says, Umar, sit down. And Umar says, leave me alone. These liars saying the Prophet, and he says, Umar, sit down. And Umar refuses to sit down. And then Abu Bakr ascends the pulpit, one step, the Prophet's pulpit, and no one ever did this before. Abu Bakr is the first. He stands on the pulpit, everyone looks at him standing on the pulpit. And Abu Bakr says these words, and he says, and now he who worships Muhammad, know that Muhammad is dead. But he who worships Allah, then know that Allah is eternal, ever living, and Allah never dies. And then he recited the verse of Ali Imran that we spoke about. Allah says, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٍ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ, that Muhammad is nothing more than a messenger. And indeed, many messengers have passed away before him. So if he dies or is killed, we will then leave and turn away. And Umar, when he heard this, Umar drops his sword and his legs basically buckles under him and he collapses. By Allah, it sounded as if the people, Umar says, it's as if though we had never heard this ayah before until Abu Bakr recited it. And so people then, now everyone becomes quiet. And the realization hits them that he is dead, and they begin to cry, and everyone goes into extreme, the reality realization hits them. Umar says, by Allah, as soon as I heard Abu Bakr say it, I fell down to the ground. I felt as if my legs had been unable to carry me, so I collapsed when I heard him say it. Only then did I realize that the Prophet ﷺ had truly died. Anas, the young servant of the Prophet ﷺ, the boy who had spent from the age of 6 to the age of 16 as the servant of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I had never witnessed a brighter or more happier day than the day the Prophet had come to us when he came to Medina. And then I had never witnessed in all my life a more darker and a more awful day than the day that he had died. And no sooner did we that did not, and it says that no sooner when the Prophet had passed away and we buried him, that our hearts reproached us. We reproached our hearts. We felt an emptiness, a depression. Our whole lives we lived with this depression. Anas would live up until almost 100 years old, and he would say that day when he was 16 years old, that was the darkest day of his life. The Sahaba eventually, in their grief, they got together to ask, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? And they agreed that they had to first bury the Prophet ﷺ. And everyone, the family of the Prophet ﷺ, Ali, they came together and they remembered a hadith where the Prophet says, a prophet only dies by permission. Allah does not take their ruh except by permission, and where they choose to die is where they should be buried. And so he died, the Prophet ﷺ died in his own private chamber in Aisha's arms in his house. And so they buried him where his bed was. They took his bed away and they dug a hole, and they were thinking, how do we wash his body? And they decided to keep his clothes on, and so they washed the Prophet ﷺ with his clothing on. They did not undress him, and they wrapped him up in a shroud. And when they placed his body in the qabr, Fatima said, how could you, later on she said to Ali, how could your soul allow you to put his body in the ground? How could you do this? And how could you put sand over his body? And when they had finished buried him, the janaza was done. Everybody was allowed to come in batches of 3s or 4s. Groups would come in your own personal capacity to perform the janaza salah on him. And because so many people wanted to perform janaza salah, it took 3 days for everybody to perform the janaza salah upon him. And finally, when the realization had come that there was no Rasul, it really hit them Dhuhr. So remember, he passes away after Fajr on Monday. Dhuhr time, Bilal had to give the adhan. And as he gives the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. He wants to recite Muhammad is Rasul. He can't. Bilal breaks down and he keeps breaking, and he tries and he can never get past this Muhammad Rasulullah. Bilal would never give adhan in Medina again. And so Medina becomes a place of sorrow and grief. And all you could hear was the crying in every single house. You would hear people saying, even months after he had passed away, when a newborn baby would be born, they wouldn't be happy at the birth of the baby. They would say, where is the Prophet now who would come and give the name of this baby and make dua for this baby? For every person living in Medina, it became unbearable. Many of the companions could not live in Medina because it was so difficult to be in a place where the Prophet ﷺ once was, and so many of them left Medina. Bilal, for example, as we said, couldn't give the adhan. He would only give adhan once after this, which was when Masjid al-Aqsa was conquered. Many years later, Masjid al-Aqsa would fall under Islam, and Umar would say, Bilal, honor us, just give us one more adhan, and he would give one last adhan in Masjid al-Aqsa. One of the poets, Hassan ibn Thabit, the poet of the Prophet, he writes, he mentions this poem basically immediately after the Prophet. Listen what he says. He says, what ails my sleepless eyes? Look what's wrong with my eyes. As if though the corners are permanently dyed with kuhl, but these tears are a permanent feature. So my eyes are black and dark, not by kuhl, by mascara, but rather it is the constant crying. And now my eyes, tears are a permanent feature of my eyes. I am in disbelief over the guided one buried this morning. I can't believe that the Prophet of Allah has just been buried today. O best of those who trod this ground, please do not go far. The lands grow narrow for the people of Medina. He says that this world has become empty for us here in Medina. And now the faces of the people of Medina are darkened with blackness. Everybody is in sorrow. And then he says, am I to stay after you have gone? How can I live in a world after you have left? In Medina among them, grief of my soul, oh my soul, how sad I am. I wish I had never been born to witness this day. I linger after his death, turning my face from right to left. And he says, like, I don't know what to do with myself now that you have left. Would I were to drink the worst of poisons, oh Allah's decree could come fast. How I wish Allah's decree could come fast. We would then rise on the same hour and meet the fragrance. How I look forward to my death so that I may rise with you. Our Lord, reunite us thereafter once and for all with our Prophet in the garden that blunts the eyes of envy. In the garden of Firdaus, decree it for us, O Majesty, O exalted Messiah. Ya Allah, grant us to be close to the Prophet ﷺ. With the death of the Prophet ﷺ, a chapter closed, the end of revelation, no more Anbiya. The connection between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the intervention of Anbiya, that chapter closes. But we know that Islam continues. And in the grief and in the sorrow of the Sahaba, they understood that Islam continues and that Allah remains. And on that day, after they had buried the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba appointed Abu Bakr to be the new Khalifa. And the news spreads far and wide that Muhammad ﷺ had passed away. And with that, a new set of challenges, a new set of hardships and opportunities would emerge for the caliphate. And this would begin the new age, the age of the Khulafa or Rashideen, the rightly guided Khalifas. And for us, living 1,500 years after the Nabi ﷺ, we continue that legacy. Islam continues through us. And that we can not only remember the Prophet ﷺ and his life, and we not only emulate his teachings, but we continue his legacy. And we take the mission of the Nabi ﷺ upon us, and we continue to do the work of the Prophet ﷺ. And in this, we end off with this hadith. A hadith by Anas radiallahu anhu, where the Prophet ﷺ says to the Sahaba, how I long to meet my brothers. And the Sahaba said, are we not your brothers? He said, no, you're not my brothers, you are my companions. But rather the brothers, the ones I would like to meet, are those who believe in me without ever having seen me. And we are the brothers of the Nabi ﷺ, and we long to meet the Prophet ﷺ as much as he longed to meet us. And so we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, may Allah send the best of salutations and blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us to follow his sunnah, that we continue to live according to his legacy and to fulfill his mission, that he may be proud of us in this dunya and that may we be close to him in Jannatul Firdaus in the Akhirah. Wa sallallahu Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.